Hello and welcome back to another edition of the Jacob and Jacob podcast. I'm your host, Jacob Pear. As always, joined by my co-host, Jacob Obam. And today we are very honored to be joined by special guest, Kevin Negandhi, who's a Sports Center anchor. Thanks for being with us today, Kevin.
Jacob, my pleasure, man. I'm glad I could join you guys.
Of course. So, Kevin, you're a Philly guy. And what was your reaction to the Eagles hiring Nick Sirianni?
Optimism. I'm hopeful that that he's the guy. If you look at his experience coming with the Chargers and the Chiefs, and of course under Frank Wright, calling plays, and what Frank's doing when it comes to installing plays. In the next few months, like who's going to be their quarterback and how are they addressing the draft? It's a step in hopefully a positive direction in Philly.
Yeah, for sure. So let's get into your career. Why did you decide to get into communications? And was there a moment in your life that made you realize that you want to get into it?
Yeah, I loved the idea of informing and telling stories to people. I mean, that's kind of my connection to my dad, watching football on Sundays and watching the Eagles, and telling my dad why this guy's good and explaining stats, and my dad is a passionate Eagles fan, but he came from India and he fell in love with football, and I was growing up here, and me standing a little bit more. I just wanted to come through this interception, or what makes with your family. Me and my brother doing that with my dad. It just actually, it I want to say, kind of lit a fire and a passion for me in doing something like this. And then eventually, when I was 14 years old, I share this story a handful of times. I was watching a college basketball game. I remember where I was. I remember it being in my living room, and the basketball player is at the free throw line. It's a college game, and the announcers looked into his profile and said, he wants to do our job. He wants to be a sportscaster. And at that moment, it just hit me that wow, like I can get paid to do this. Like, this is what I want to do, and I get to travel, and it just made perfect sense for me. And then that night, I watched Sports Center, and I watch Sports Center every night, but that specific night, I just said I wanted to be the first Indian American on Sports Center. And at 14, you dream big.
Yeah.
17 years later, to realize that and actually be the first Indian American on Sports Center is pretty wild. So that's kind of how I would explain the moment and the light bulb for me going off, saying this is what I want to do for the rest of my career.
So take us down memory lane. How did you go from that being that boy watching college basketball in the living room to actually being the sports anchor at ESPN?
It's a lot of hard work. I tell a lot of aspiring journalists that and broadcasters that you don't just take one job and the next job is your dream job. It's a lot of grinding and a lot of hours with the unknown. I left TV for a year. I was done actually with TV in my towards my late 20s, and I was at peace with it. So I would say that there's a lot of steps you take forward. There's a handful of steps you take backwards, and the journey is really my journey is not going to be duplicated. Your journey, whoever's listening, their journey won't be duplicated to get the same results. It's a combination of different experiences and learning from those experiences. So I went from, going to Syracuse because I thought that's what every great sportscaster would do, and the Bob Costas of the world, the Marv Alberts. I wanted to be those guys, the Mike Tiricos. And then I realized, Syracuse wasn't for me. So after a semester, I transferred to Temple. And Temple was making that decision was one of the greatest decisions of my life, because it opened up so many things for me and opportunities in Market 4. And then by the time I graduated, I took my first job in Kirksville, Missouri. Then I went to Sarasota, Florida.
Yeah.
You take a lot of different steps, but if you pull any ESPN anchor and their resume and their journey out, and you compare it to another one, you won't get the same stuff. You'll have so many different storylines. So I always tell people the one bottom line and the theme that we all share is a lot of hard work, a lot of grinding when no one's watching, and building relationships and being at the right place at the right time and being prepared for that opportunity.
What did you do in your year off from television?
I went to work for my dad, who has an accounting business, and I went to travel. I went to India for a month to see the country through my father's eyes, which I would have never gotten if I was in TV, because in TV you can't. It's unheard of to take a month off in anything. And then I came back and got into pharmaceutical sales and started my own entertainment company. So I did a lot of different things. And let me tell you, it worked out. It worked out well. There was a reason why I did all the things I did. And I wouldn't change one thing and one decision.
So, of course, now you're obviously at Sports Center. So, walk us through, what is the day in the life like of a ESPN Sports Center anchor?
So I'm on the 6 p.m. Sports Center. I've been doing it for 3 years. I love the job, and that each Sports Center is different. The morning show, you'll have a show that I did for 5 years. You'll have a mixture of highlights and interviews. The night show, which I did for a handful of years, you're just going to have a lot of highlights. And then the 6 p.m. is a combination of, you're having a little bit of highlights, a lot of interviews, and a lot of pregame. And, that is the interview process, and a lot of hard-hitting news of the day. So we have a noon meeting, and that features, a dozen people, from producers to directors to graphics producers to segment producers to researchers to the other anchor I'm with. We give a variety of topic ideas and show ideas. And the producer's job is to kind of sort it out. And the meeting goes for about 25 to 30 minutes. And I start writing, because the rundown will be in around like 3 o'clock. Start writing at 3. I write from like 3 to 5, give or take, because if the show changes or they're moving a story around. And then, 5 o'clock, I get a change, and by 5:30, you're probably on the set doing early interviews, or you're tweaking the show. For example, tonight and tomorrow night, on Monday and Tuesdays for me during the college basketball season, literally when I'm done Sports Center at 7 o'clock, I walk across the hall and then I do college hoops, and I'm doing half times with Seth Greenberg and LaFonso Ellis, as I'll do tonight and tomorrow night for Big Monday and Super Tuesday. So I'm not home till probably midnight on Monday and Tuesdays. And then during college football season, I'm in studio for ABC from, I go into work around 10:30 in the morning, and I probably get home by midnight, because you're doing all day pregame, postgame, halftime studio stuff on ABC. So you don't leave. It's not one of those jobs where you're looking at the clock and your 8 hours are up and you move in, you move out. That's not what this business is about. The business is about, some days you're here for 8 hours, some days it's 10, some days it's 12. You're there till the job is done. But I love it, because every day is different. Not one day is the same, and I'm never bored.
So hypothetical scenario. So say you're on the air, you're on the 6 o'clock Sports Center, and then a James Harden trade happens. How do you adjust the show? How do you sort of fit that in there, obviously, with the breaking news?
What you're doing immediately is, all right, what are the details, as actually that happened a couple weeks ago. And then you're reaching out to the researcher, and if he's going to give you extra notes, for me, I'm looking through Twitter and some of the beat writers with the Nets. I'm looking at what Woj is tweeting, Malika Andrews, who's around the Nets. I'm looking at the Rockets beat writers like Tim McMahon, who's a great reporter in Houston. Yeah. So you're basically gathering information, and then your producers, in your ear saying, all right, we're going to have this guy on. We're going to have this reporter on. We're going to have this analyst on. So, the day of, we got Woj on. We had Malik on. We had Rachel Nichols on. You're getting a variety of different perspectives. And then in your ear, they're saying, all right, we've got sound that just came in from Steve Nash. We've got sound coming in. Here's Stephen A's take. We're going to have Stephen A on. Here's Michael Wilbon. We're going to have Michael Wilbon on. So all of that's going on, and you just go with it, man. That's the fun stuff where you could react to a big story. I mean, I go back to, it's big news today, of course, because of what we saw yesterday with Tom Brady. I was on the air with Nicole Briscoe when the Tom Brady is going to the Patriots story broke with Adam Schefter, and Adam broke it with us. And the rest of the hour, you're going back and forth with information. And, I'll never forget when Adam joined me and I asked him a bunch of questions. The one nugget I had at the end of the interview was, let's not forget, Super Bowl 55 is in Tampa Bay, and we have not seen a team host the Super Bowl. And I made sure to bring that up. And this was mid-March. Yeah. And look what's happening. Of course, that was the big story yesterday. So you got to have that context and information and background at a moment's notice, because you could help educate your audience, because you never know. It gives them a little bit more information as we're in a society that's seeking and consuming information at a moment's notice.
So you talked about Tom Brady, who's obviously the greatest football player of all time, but now the debate is he the greatest athlete of all time? Do you believe that Brady's the greatest athlete of all time?
Oh man, that's really tough. I would have to say, no, but that's a personal perspective. Like I would look at it, depending on what your baseline grading is. Is it because Brady's going to 10 Super Bowls? Then I'd kind of bring up, hey, look at what Bill Russell did, where, with his, championship run. I think it was like 11. So it just depends on what your baseline is, what era you're looking at, the domination. What Brady has done is incredible in this era as a quarterback. It's unheard of to see anybody go to the Super Bowl 4 or 5 times. To have somebody go 10 times is absurd. So he's in the conversation. I don't know if I would make him the greatest athlete of all time. I would, without a doubt, say he's the greatest quarterback of all time, and you could say maybe the greatest NFL player of all time. But at the same time, it's apples to oranges if you're going to compare him to the Michael Jordan conversation, or you're going to compare him to Muhammad Ali, or you're going to compare him to, past people that, I think we're judged differently to how we judge athletes right now. So it all depends on era and baselines. So somebody in your generation will probably consider Tom Brady the greatest of all time. Maybe my generation would consider Michael Jordan the greatest of all time, because he was 6-0 in the finals, and he never had to worry about a potential Game 7. So that to me shows the greatness of an individual compared to others. But again, it goes by eras and domination.
So let's look back to March of 2020, when the majority of the sports world was shut down. What was it like covering sports during that time period?
Challenging. It was very challenging, and at one point, a little depressing because of the unknown. And we were doing 2 hours of live programming every day. I think, I'm pretty proud to say, when you watched Sports Center at 6 p.m., like, my crew was there every day, myself and my crew on the air every day, alongside Mike Greenberg and Stephen A. Smith and Scott Van Pelt. Those 3 anchors and myself, we were on, hey, until we figure it out, we're not leaving. And we went through months of creating content. I think that's a credit to our producers on Sports Center, trying to find an entertainment value, but at the same time, and a news value of updating people. Hey, here's where we're at. But think about this. In March, when we shut down, mid-March was the NFL free agent period led by Brady. Then that went into Gronk surprising everybody and coming back. That led to the NFL draft. That led into the reaction from the NFL draft, which led into, a conversation in May of, are we returning? Us getting better information that we are going to be potentially returning. More information in June that Major League Baseball and the NBA are getting closer and closer. So we found a way to create content, and that's a huge credit to our producers in creating those conversations. Then in between, then we had, UFC come back, we had golf come back, we had soccer come back, we had NASCAR come back, so we could fill in the holes before we had the 4 major sports return. So we found a way. Yeah. But there were some days where you're like, okay, what do we do? We're doing the same thing over and over. Okay, here we go. I'm just grateful that we have these type of moments where we can celebrate and talk about, results on the field like we just did yesterday, and have storylines and then transition right into the NBA and the college basketball season.
So another thing that you covered was the Special Olympics. What was it like to cover the Special Olympics? And was it a life-changing moment to see it and be able to witness it?
Jacob, it was an amazing experience for me because I believe in the mantra that everybody deserves a chance. And because I wanted to get a chance. When I was growing up, I didn't see a lot of people that looked like me on TV, and all I asked for was a chance. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what any athlete asks for. When you're at the playground, you just want to get picked and play, right? You want to get picked and play. And many of these athletes have gone through life where the hardship is they don't get the opportunity to play. And covering those stories where we could explain that all they want is an opportunity, and by giving them the chance in a form where they could express themselves, where they could build confidence, and they could play with a team. It changes their lives. It changes their families' lives. It changes their communities because it gives them a certain confidence. The Special Olympic athletes are just amazing and incredible individuals because they come from a great place in their heart of, I just want to belong somewhere, and I'm going to give you my best because this is what I care about. So when I had the chance to cover these events and you could explain those stories, you could see lives changing right before your eyes. You could see the happiness and the joy, and it just gives you the right perspective of why you do what you do in this business, because you love sport, and you see the passion on their faces. There's nothing better. There's nothing better than sharing their stories and seeing the reaction and following up, and their lives are changed because of it. So I'm honored to represent ESPN. I'm honored to share their stories. I'm just so looking forward to what's ahead with the way we're going to do it with the USA games are going to be in Orlando in a couple years, and then I think the next international games will be in Russia. It's been very cool to be a part of it since 2015.
That's awesome. Really awesome. So before we let you go, we're going to ask 4 questions, sort of fill in the blank questions that are centered around some Philly things. So let's get right into it. D'Alessandro's is the blank cheesesteak place in Philadelphia.
Oh, that's a good one. D'Alessandro's is one of the best cheesesteak places in all of Philadelphia. I would definitely put them on my short list, probably top 3. Maybe my favorite. It just depends on, I guess, where I am that day, because you could name a handful of them, but they're definitely top 3.
Joel Embiid is the blank best player in the NBA.
Really good question. I would say Joel Embiid is the 5th best player in the NBA, and I'm saying that because I just want to put him in the top 5. And when you go by top 5, you can make a case in no specific order where LeBron's involved, Kevin Durant's involved. You can make the case that Giannis is in the conversation and a healthy Steph Curry. So the way Joel is playing, he's playing like an MVP. So I would put him in the top 5. So I'd say 5th.
All right. Blank will be the Eagles starting QB week 1 next season.
Oh,
Little controversy right there.
yeah. Considering I don't know, and it is the 3rd week of January when we're taping this, I am going to say Carson Wentz will be the starting quarterback in September, and it's a lot of that has to do with his contract.
Yep.
I agree with you. Definitely agree with you. And one more here. Gritty is the blank mascot in sports.
Gritty is the 3rd best mascot in sports. The number 1 mascot in all of sports is the Philly Fanatic. The Fanatic is my favorite of all time in any environment or situation. I think he's the godfather of mascots. The second one I would go with is Franklin, the Sixers mascot, because he's a friend and he's always been super kind to me and my kids. And then the third one would be Gritty, because every time I look at Gritty, it makes me laugh. Swoop, I love too, but Gritty, anything Gritty does makes me laugh and makes my kids laugh, and that's all. That's the whole point of a mascot, right? To entertain and make you laugh, and my kids love them. So I would say 3rd best.
Yep. Well, Kevin, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, thank you so
Fellas,
much.
thank you. I appreciate it, and thanks for reaching out, and best of luck to you guys, and stay safe and healthy.
You too. Make sure, to all our viewers out there, you check Kevin out on the 6 o'clock Sports Center every weeknight.